in Iran. Now, it is absolutely crucial to remember that what we're about to go through is a breakdown of their report. These are their claims, and they haven't been independently verified, so let's deconstruct what this one source is alleging.
The report kicks off with this incredibly stark statement: a very dangerous and heavy strike has occurred. Just that one sentence. It sets a really dramatic tone, and it's basically the foundation for everything that they claim follows.
Okay, so first up, the initial claim itself. We're talking about a massive, coordinated attack that the source alleges happened directly on Iranian soil.
And the key detail here, according to the report, is the sheer scale of this thing. They describe it as a widespread operation, not just some isolated incident. They're talking about multiple strategic centers getting hit all across the country, including right in the capital, Tehran.
And they actually put a number on it. The source claims that as many as 30 different sites were targeted in this first wave. That's a detail that's clearly meant to emphasize just how intense and widespread this alleged operation was.
Now, this is one of the more surprising details in the report: the timing. The source is adamant that these strikes happened in broad daylight. You know, that's a tactic that would be designed to create maximum shock, completely subverting the expectation of a more typical nighttime attack.
All right, so let's move on to the players involved, because the report doesn't just say what they think happened, it makes some very specific claims about who was supposedly responsible.
And this is a really big claim. The source alleges that while Israeli jets were the ones conducting the attack, it wasn't a solo mission. They flat out assert that the United States was a direct, active participant, even deploying its own jets from bases in the region.
And it doesn't stop there. The report throws in this major tech component to their claims about U.S. involvement. It alleges this wasn't just about planes in the air. The source explicitly says that artificial intelligence was used to guide the targeting for these strikes.
So, why? What would be the motive for such a huge operation? Well, the third part of the report lays out a very clear and incredibly ambitious objective: taking out Iran's top leadership.
According to this source, we're not talking about just hitting buildings. The alleged primary goal was a decapitation strike aimed at Iran's entire leadership structure. I mean, from the absolute highest figures, like the Supreme Leader and the President, all the way down through military commanders like the Pasdarana Inqilab, that's the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, as well as government ministers and key strategic facilities.
But, and this is a huge but in their report, they're also quick to add that this primary mission, eliminating the leadership, failed in the initial wave. They claim that all of these key figures were successfully moved to safe, undisclosed locations.
So what happens next? Well, the report paints a picture of immediate and widespread fallout, with the entire region basically being thrown into a state of high alert.
The source then lays out this chain reaction of events. It alleges states of emergency were declared, regional airspace was completely shut down, and civilians in Israel were urgently ordered into bomb shelters, a full-scale defensive posture.
The report also starts to speculate on the logistics. How can an attack of this magnitude even be pulled off? It suggests the operation must have used the airspace of neighboring countries, specifically naming Iraq and Syria, and even implies that military bases in other nations in the region could have been involved.
And this brings us to the final part of their report, where it stops being about what allegedly happened and starts being about what they predict is going to happen next.
This quote really captures the entire takeaway from the source. Their claim is that this event, whatever it was, crossed a line. It's not a skirmish. In their view, it's a point of no return, a full-blown, large-scale declaration of war. And if that's true, what's the next move? Well, according to the report, a powerful and widespread counterattack is now inevitable. They state that retaliation against American and Israeli assets all across the region is no longer a question of if, but when.
And so that's where the report leaves us, with this incredibly sobering conclusion that these alleged events have kicked off a much wider, unstoppable conflict. It's a shocking prediction, and it's so important to remember this is the perspective from one single outlet. The question they really leave hanging in the air is, what happens if their claims are true? What are the consequences when a regional conflict goes global?